Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling something
Okay.
I bet a lot of you can relate to.
Right.
Binge watching.
Yeah.
You know that feeling of just one more episode until suddenly it's 3 a.m.?
Oh, yeah.
You sent us some research on how binge watching and mental health are connected,
Okay.
especially for young adults. And let me tell you, it's eye-opening stuff.
What's fascinating is that we often think of binge watching as harmless fun,
Right.
a way to unwind.
Yeah.
But the studies you shared suggest it might be a bit more complicated than that.
Yeah, it really makes you think.
Yeah.
One of the things you sent was a meta-analysis.
Okay.
And that basically means it looked at a bunch of different studies together
Right.
to see the bigger picture.
Uh-huh.
This one was published in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health
Okay.
and analyzed 16 studies with over 8,000 people.
Wow.
That's a pretty big pool to draw from.
Absolutely.
And what they found is that there's a connection between binge watching and things like stress, loneliness, anxiety, and even sleep problems.
Okay, so not just feeling a little bummed after finishing a show,
Right,
but actual potential impacts on our mental well-being.
right. The strongest link they found was between binge watching and feeling stressed.
Interesting.
Now, it's not saying that one episode of your favorite show is going to send your stress levels through the roof.
Right.
It's more about how it plays out over time.
Yeah, I can see that, like anything else, moderation is probably key.
Right.
But why would binge watching be linked to these things?
Yeah.
I'm genuinely curious about what the research says about that.
Well, the researchers have a few ideas,
Okay.
and they draw on some psychological theories.
Okay.
One is the uses and gratification theory.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it says that people use media,
Uh-huh.
in this case, binge watching,
Right.
to fulfill certain needs or desires.
So it's not just about passively watching, it's about what we're getting out of it.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So one idea is that people use binge watching as a coping mechanism,
Okay.
a way to deal with stress or difficult emotions.
Mm-hmm.
It's like pressing pause on your own life and diving into a different world.
I do that.
Yeah.
I mean, who hasn't gotten sucked into a great show and felt that sense of escape?
Right.
But is that always a bad thing?
Right.
Couldn't it be helpful sometimes to take a break from reality?
It can be, for sure.
Yeah.
But here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
This meta-analysis found that the link between binge watching and some mental health issues,
Okay.
particularly depression and loneliness, was actually stronger during the pandemic.
That makes a lot of sense, though, doesn't it?
Right.
We were all stuck at home, cut off from our usual social interactions.
Right.
Binge watching might have been a way to cope with that isolation,
Yeah.
or just to feel connected to something outside our own four walls.
That's what the researchers think, too.
Yeah.
It's like screen time became a substitute for real-life interaction, which could have had some unintended consequences.
Okay, so the context of our lives plays a role.
Right. But the meta-analysis also found something else pretty surprising.
Oh.
That stress and sleep issues were more strongly linked to binge watching in developing countries than in developed countries.
Why do you think that is?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
One possible explanation is the difference in access to mental health resources.
Okay.
In places where therapy or other forms of support are less readily available, people might be more likely to rely on binge watching as their main way to cope with stress.
It's like it becomes the go-to strategy.
Right.
Which could potentially lead to some of those negative outcomes we're talking about.
Exactly. And now let's dive into some of those individual studies you sent in.
Okay.
They offer an even closer look at how binge watching affects us,
Yeah.
especially younger adults.
Okay.
For instance, one study in Frontiers in Psychology focused on something called anxiety-depressive syndrome.
So not just feeling a little down, but more serious levels of anxiety and depression.
Right, and what they found is that this syndrome was a significant predictor
Okay.
of what they called problematic binge-watching symptoms.
So it's not just about feeling anxious or depressed in general.
Right.
It suggests that having those conditions might actually make someone more likely to develop an unhealthy relationship with binge watching.
That's a very important point.
Yeah.
It suggests a possible direction of influence.
Right.
It's not just a correlation, it's like one might be leading to the other.
That's really thought-provoking.
This study also looked at the reasons people binge watch,
Okay.
which I think is a piece of the puzzle that's often missing from the conversation.
Absolutely. And it turns out those reasons or motivations play a big role
Right.
in how binge watching affects our mental health.
Yeah.
Specifically, this study found two motivations that were linked to problematic binge watching:
Okay.
the desire to escape and the desire to deal with loneliness.
So if someone's already struggling with anxiety or depression,
Yeah.
they might be more likely to use binge watching as a way to numb those feelings
Right.
or escape from their own thoughts.
Exactly. And on the loneliness side, it might be about seeking that feeling of connection.
Right.
Even if it's just through the characters on a screen, it's a way to feel less alone, even if it's temporary.
I like that feeling of, I get you, even if it's with a fictional character.
Precisely. And this idea of loneliness and escapism as key drivers of binge watching
Right.
was further supported by another study, also from Frontiers in Psychology.
So we're seeing a pattern here.
Yes.
It's not that binge watching causes those feelings.
Right.
It's that if they're already there, they can push us towards using it as a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Perhaps in a way that becomes problematic over time.
Exactly. And it's not just about how much we watch,
Right.
but why we watch.
Right.
That's a really crucial takeaway.
Yeah. You know, as we're talking about all this, I'm realizing there's another layer we haven't even touched on yet. What we're actually watching.
That's a fantastic point. It's not just about the binge watching itself, but the content.
Right.
Is it a lighthearted comedy or a nail-biting thriller?
Right.
Those genres can have very different effects on our moods.
Right. I mean, think about how you feel after a marathon of true crime documentaries versus a feel-good sitcom.
Yeah,
Totally different vibes.
exactly. And even the pacing of a show can matter.
Oh, yeah.
Something with constant cliffhangers might leave you feeling more on edge, while a slower, more character-driven story could allow for more reflection.
It's like how some music hypes you up and some chills you out.
Yeah.
It makes sense that the content itself plays a role in how binge watching impacts us.
And what about the characters we're spending all this time with?
Right.
Are they inspiring us or showing us unhealthy behaviors?
Yeah.
Do we relate to them or do they leave us feeling drained?
It's like choosing your friends almost.
Right.
Some lift you up and some bring you down.
Yeah.
We need to be just as choosy about the company we keep in our binge watching sessions.
Exactly. So in addition to how much we watch and why we watch,
Right.
it's worth considering what we watch and how it makes us feel.
It's all about being a mindful viewer,
Yes.
not just zoning out, but actually tuning in to how the content is affecting us.
I love that. Mindful viewing.
Yeah.
Just like we're becoming more mindful eaters, maybe we need to be more mindful binge watchers.
So we've been focusing a lot on the potential downsides.
Uh-huh.
But to be fair, not all the research suggests that binge watching is bad for us.
Right.
Remember that preprint study we mentioned?
Yes.
The one that connected binge watching to positive feelings and well-being.
Right. That study reminds us that there are potential upsides too.
Yeah.
Binge watching can be relaxing, a way to connect with friends or online communities, even a way to learn something new.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I recently binge watched a whole series on ancient history,
Nice.
and I learned so much. There you go.
It sparked a whole new interest for me.
And for others, it might be about sharing laughs with their family while binge watching a comedy special,
Right.
or finding a sense of belonging in a fan group that geeks out over the same show.
Yeah.
There's a social aspect to it that can be really positive.
So it's not inherently good or bad.
Right.
It's about finding what works for you and recognizing that there's no single answer for everyone.
Exactly. It comes back to individual motivations and preferences.
Right.
Tuning into what you're looking for and how you feel during and after a binge watching session is key.
That's one of the things I love about these deep dives.
Yeah.
We get to go beyond the simple headlines and really explore the nuances of a topic.
Yeah.
And in this case, the nuances are really important.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's about encouraging critical thinking, asking questions, and ultimately helping you make informed decisions about your own media habits.
Now, as we wrap up this section on binge watching and mental health,
Okay.
I'm struck by one big theme that keeps coming up.
Oh.
Motivation.
Oh, yeah. It seems like that's a crucial factor in understanding the impact of binge watching.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Almost every study we've looked at points to motivation as a key piece of the puzzle.
It's not just how much we watch, or even what we watch, but why we watch.
Exactly.
Are we looking for distraction, escape, connection,
Yeah.
relaxation,
Yeah.
knowledge,
Right.
maybe a mix of all those things?
And those reasons can change even within a single binge watching session.
Right.
We might start feeling stressed and wanting to unwind, but then get pulled into this story or characters
Yeah.
and find ourselves feeling more connected.
Or maybe we start out just wanting to be entertained,
Yeah.
but end up learning something new or having our perspective shifted in some way.
Right.
It's fascinating how complex it is.
Absolutely. So the big takeaway here as we think about our own binge watching habits
Yeah.
is to cultivate self-awareness.
Yes. Notice why you're choosing to binge watch.
Yeah.
How are you feeling beforehand?
Right.
What are you hoping to get out of it? And how do you feel afterwards?
And if you notice that binge watching consistently leaves you feeling drained, anxious, or regretful, maybe it's time to reassess your relationship with it.
Right.
Maybe you need to set some boundaries, choose content more mindfully, or find other ways to meet those underlying needs.
It's like anything else in life.
Yeah.
Finding that balance, that sweet spot where it remains enjoyable without negatively impacting our well-being.
And don't forget, there's no shame in seeking support if you need it.
Right.
If you're concerned about your binge-watching habits or how they're affecting your mental health,
Yeah.
talking to a therapist or counselor can be incredibly helpful.
They can provide personalized guidance and help you develop a healthier relationship with screen time.
Yeah,
After all, taking care of our mental health is just as important as taking care of our physical health.
couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Now, as we move into the final part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with a thought-provoking question.
Okay.
What if we could harness the power of binge-watching for good?
Harness the power of binge watching for good.
Yeah.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
But how would we actually do that?
Well, imagine if streaming services actually incorporated features that encourage us to be more mindful while we're watching.
Ooh, give me an example. What kind of features are we talking about?
For starters, they could have built-in breaks that pop up and prompt us to check in with ourselves.
So instead of just automatically playing the next episode, it would pause and be like, hey, how are you doing? Are you still enjoying this?
Exactly. It would be a little nudge to become more aware of our mental state in that moment.
Yeah,
Do we really want to keep going, or do we need a break?
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like a little mindfulness bell right in the middle of our binge watching session.
And it could even go a step further.
Okay.
What if they gave us recommendations based on our mood?
Okay, I'm picturing this.
Yeah.
I'm feeling stressed.
Okay.
So the platform suggests a lighthearted comedy or maybe a nature documentary with calming visuals.
Right. Or if you're feeling lonely, it might point you towards a show with themes of connection and community.
Wow, that would be amazing. It'd be like having a personal media therapist,
Right.
helping us choose content that actually supports our well-being.
And think about the potential for educational content.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah.
Like bite-sized videos on managing stress or improving sleep, woven right into our binge-watching experience.
Exactly. We could be learning valuable skills without even realizing it.
Yeah.
It would make mental health resources so much more accessible.
It would be like sneaking vegetables into a smoothie.
Right.
You're getting the good stuff without sacrificing the enjoyment.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It's about making mental health support fun and engaging.
What about features that encourage us to actually think about what we're watching and talk about it with others?
Absolutely. Imagine prompts for journaling or discussion questions that pop up during the show.
Or virtual watch parties where you can connect with other fans and have those water cooler conversations in real time.
Right. It would turn binge watching into a more social and interactive experience,
Yeah.
which could have huge benefits for our mental health.
And think about the impact on mental health stigma.
Yeah.
If we're talking about these things openly and integrating support resources right into the platforms we're already using,
Right.
it could really help to normalize these conversations.
It would send a powerful message that taking care of our mental health is just as important as taking care of our physical health.
I don't know about you, but this conversation has really opened my eyes to the possibilities.
Yeah.
Binge watching doesn't have to be a guilty pleasure or a mindless escape.
Right.
It can be so much more.
I agree, and I think that's a really empowering message for our listeners.
Yeah.
Binge watching is here to stay. It's part of our culture.
Right.
But we have the power to shape it into something positive, something that supports our well-being.
So as you settle in for your next binge watching session, remember to be mindful,
Yeah.
be intentional, and be kind to yourself. And if you ever find yourself feeling lost in the digital world, remember that there's always support available.
Reach out, connect, and prioritize your mental health. It's
Yeah.
the most important show you'll ever watch.
And on that note, I think it's time for us to hit the pause button on this deep dive.
Until next time, happy watching, everyone.